thank Marvon in the first place for inviting me out here to share some thoughts with you. Um, Probably the things that we talk about won't be anything that you've never heard of before, but my aim isn't so much to discover something, but more my aim this morning is for us to exchange ideas with each other on the has to do with leadership, of course, but in a specific way that I'll be kind of going over here, extracting some thoughts that I have from the scriptures. And but I've Marvin's already mentioned that known him for a little while. I started thinking about how long ago that was, Marvin. Should I say the number, or is that yeah? Back in 1971 is when Camp Koinonia started. It was the second year after Koinonia that Marvin came to camp to help with camp. That's what I noticed you there. So you do the math, but anyway, it's been a long time, and seen Marvin off and on over the years. But I appreciate the invite to come out, and like I say, my hope is that this is something that encourages you, admonishes, maybe exhorts us to be fervent in what we do as far as our what we've been given as far as our responsibility to one another and to the growth of the Lord's church. I wanted to begin with the parable that we read in Matthew chapter 25. I guess, and another warning to you: this is the second PowerPoint I've ever done. So you're the second guinea pig. So one of the problems I have with doing a PowerPoint is remembering to advance to the next slide. So we'll see if you just kind of flag me down since I think you're ahead of yourself. But we'll start with this parable, and I encourage you to go and in your personal reading and read the entire chapter 25 of Matthew. There's three parables there. They all have essentially the same message. There's some different flavor to each one. But for the sake of context, it will help you to see the thrust of what Jesus is saying here just before he goes to the cross, giving some final instructions about what's to come. Excuse me, also, that I'm getting over the gun. So if I'm clearing my throat a lot, yeah, I hope you'll forgive me for that. We'll begin. I'm going to read the parable in its entirety so that we have it fresh in our minds as we look at the thoughts that come from this. And also, keep interrupting myself here. If you could be prepared, just raise your hand or whatever. If I need to call on someone to read a scripture, the passages I put them in their complete form within the handout, so you don't necessarily have to turn to your Bible. If you could just read it from there, I just thought it'd make it easier that way. And I also left some space. I'm going to ask some questions, but I left some space on some of these handouts, some of the areas for you to write in some things that you thoughts you had in the moment, or you heard someone else say some suggestions of ideas that support what we're talking about. A place for you to write these down so that we go away with each other's ideas was kind of the idea behind this. So let's look at this parable, and we will dig down into this. For it is just like a man who, about to go on a journey, who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and another one 1, each according to his own ability, and he went on his journey. Immediately, the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and gained 5 more talents. In the same manner, the one who had received 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who had received 1 talent went away and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of the slaves came and settled accounts with them. And the one who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 more talents, saying, Master, you entrusted me 5 talents. To me, see, I have gained 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. The one who had received the 2 talents came up and said, Master, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who had said, and the one also who had received the 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. But his master answered him and said to him, You wicked, lazy slave. You knew that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I did not scatter, where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received money back with interest. Therefore, take away the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has shall more be given, and he shall have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. And cast out that worthless slave into outer darkness, in the place there shall in that place where there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What are some of the things that stand out to you in this parable? When you read this and you're looking for the therefore what out of this passage, what are some of the things that stand out to you?
I appreciate your opening comment. This is in a series, and to me, it speaks loudly of the whole thing about be ready for His coming, and and He expects it,
right?
The Lord expects us to be active and doing whatever we can with our talents.
Exactly. There's a personal preparedness, the parable of the virgins. There is an application of using what he has given to us for his purpose. And then there's the treatment of one another, these 3 different things. And all these come together to be the whole of what our mission here is, our purpose, how we can examine ourselves and see whether or not we're walking in these things. And you put them all together, you kind of get that it paints a full picture of what that looks like for me in my readiness. Go ahead.
It just hit me when you read this time that it talks about that he dug a hole, and I never really thought about it that I always pictured that guy, he didn't do anything. In his mind, he might think, well, I dug a hole, I took some action, and we can fool ourselves into thinking that just sheer effort
matters,
some kind of effort which leads to nothing.
Right. Interesting. I never considered that a side of it, only that he hit it. That's always the way I took it. It's just like it's outside.
Yeah, from his perspective, okay, I did a good thing. I don't know if he's cringing waiting for the master to come, or if he's
nobody got it from me.
Yeah,
nobody stole it from me.
Broke even something.
Yeah. So, what is the parable promise? Is there a promise to be found in here?
Enter into the joy.
Eternal life, the joy of the master, right? Isn't that what we're hoping for? We look at this and say, that's the part I like. That's a kind of a good part for me to focus on. So then what does the parable warn? There's 2 sides of the coin here. What does it say happens with the one who does not put these things into practice? Cast into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I know for myself, younger, you think about that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth is where the really bad people go, right? The ones who you think about all the horrific things being done around the world. Okay, those are the people who end up in this place. It's not reserved only for the overtly wicked. It sounds to me like those who are not putting into practice what was given, the responsibility, end up in this place. It's like, well, how does that work? That should tell us just the gravity of what it is that we are dealing with here. And that's where I wanted to start out and use the thrust up the conclusion of this parable to help drive us not only in our seriousness of hearing, enter into the joy of the master, but also to not be cast out. If you took a vote, you'd say, who all here would like to be cast out? I don't think you'd have any takers, and yet here's the sad part. That's where most are going, according to what Jesus said about the broad way. Most are going to choose, I'll go with the casting out thing, thanks. But by virtue of their response to this. So do we take this parable to heart is what this ultimately comes down to. Ephesians 2 and verse 10. Brett, could you read that? Ephesians 2. It's in the handout.
Oh, is it? Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I caught you off guard there.
So Ephesians 2:10.
Yes.
It's on. Oh yeah, I see it. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them.
Does that sound like a suggestion, or what we were created to do? Created to do. We were made for this purpose, and He came up with. People get creative, don't they? They come up with the different things they do in the Lord's name. Oh, I think He would like it if I did this. Did you ask Him? Well, no, but it came from my heart. I meant well. He said, the good part here is I don't have to come up with any of this stuff. I just have to find out what He said and do those things. That's what how I respond to this instruction. So let's go into this area here, letting that be the kind of the springboard. Divining talents. So there's a lot we could extract from this parable. We could spend a long time talking about what is a talent? Why did He use that? And what is it meant by this? And there's a lot of moving parts in this parable that we can explore. I'm going to keep it somewhat narrow and talk specifically about the talents that were handed out to all three of these people. One got 5, one got 2, one got 1. Okay, so we're going to talk about, what's the therefore what for me as far as talents go? How do I translate that word talent into something that it is tangible or visible for me? So how do you measure talents? One of them might be this way. Is it a natural talent? Have you known anybody with natural talent? And I'm not just talking about in church or spiritual matters. I'm just talking about they just picked up a baseball and threw it, and they were good at it, just they were a natural. You know what I'm talking about. You didn't have almost no coaching. In fact, coaching might have gotten in the way for some people. They just had it. And so you look at that, it's built into them. Would it be safe to say that this probably fits in with where the master had given talents? Here's some talents for you to take and go and use for my purpose. They came from me. I'm giving them to you. I'm entrusting these to you. You didn't come up with it. I did. And so He hands those. There's a natural side to this. What about if somebody's artistic? My dad was artistic. My uncle Jack was artistic. Your dad tried his own hand. He tried it. But there's my daughter's artistic. They pick up something that you can draw with, and artwork flows from it. I pick it up and it looks like scratch. So this is not me, okay? Or they have a musical bent, musical talent. They pick up music quickly. You can either make it, or they sing well, or however they can play the piano, pick up any kind of an instrument, and it's like they were made to hold that instrument and make it make sound. Someone who's organized. Another thing which I am not, I have to work at that one. But there are some people, their life is order. Even from their youth, before they can even put words together, you can already see it. This goes here, and they know right where everything is. Somebody who is eloquent. They stand up and they just know how to put words together. They are very good at just speaking to people, whether it's a one-on-one conversation. They just communicate well. It didn't seem like they really had any kind of formal training. They just can, or somebody who's, when I use the word charismatic, you understand, I'm not, you sometimes it has a negative connotation to it, but somebody with charisma, people just want to be with them. You probably knew somebody like that. You see the circle of young people, there's the one person in that circle that everyone's like, oh, we get to be with them. And they're not more intelligent. They're not more well spoken. People just like, let's just be with them. I just want to be with them. And they have a natural ability to draw. I would say that these are some things that are given to people, and this is just a short list. In fact, I want to kind of pause right here. Does any thoughts, are you triggered by any of this as far as other ideas of what you think is a natural ability? Something you could jot down.
I became a Christian when I was 55, and so that's 21 years ago. And one of the things that I really appreciated that the members of the church did were encourage me, leading up prayer, serving the table, the things that we are assigned to do. And I really appreciated that because there were certain people that were really good at telling you, hey, you did a really nice job on the prayer, or appreciated your thoughts, or stuff like that. So encouraging. It may go along with charismatic.
It is.
Yeah.
And we are going to go exactly into what you're talking about right there. That's in these slides. But just an ability to help someone with their ability.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's some people that they're born to lead.
Okay. It just seems that way.
They try to lead. Some people try to lead, but they're not leaders.
Yeah.
And that they won't attract people to follow them.
They look behind them, and there's just a line of people behind them.
Yeah. That they're just born to lead.
Yeah. It's a phenomenon.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of people following me around, but and that's okay. But anyway, I get your point. It is well made. But
So the sad part is you might meet one or two people in your lifetime that has this ability. I mean, the
Right.
real deal,
Right.
they're
they just have it.
yeah.
What makes me think about is there are people out there that they just naturally can fix things. They can look at things and put something together sometimes without even the instruction.
Yeah.
Or if there's a problem, they can figure out, well, this is how it might take a while, but this is what you got to do to fix that problem.
Where I work, they hired me to do that exact thing there. So there's something that look and say, well, that's dumb. Let's fix it this way, So, but I relate to what you said right there.
And there's also, with natural talent, there's a whole bunch of people that probably have all of these, not all of them, but most of these who can do all of them. I've seen,
They
and
make you sick, don't they?
my sister, she is artistic.
Mhm.
She can play an instrument.
Yeah.
She's organized, for the most part
You
organized.
start asking, what do you not do? What can you not do? You
Yeah.
find that so I can have you try it, so I can watch you fail, so I can at least see you fail at something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So how about this one? It's something you acquire. How do you discover your own talents? Maybe you're going, I don't know. How do you discover your talents? Well, what about this? Do you think you can do this? Do it this way through just trial and error, And maybe you did it, and maybe you did fail, but you try it again, and each time you do it, you get a little bit better, and so it's something you develop, rather than it necessarily being something that falls in your lap, or you came out of the womb doing these things. It's something that you experiment with. You have a sense of what they might be, and you maybe explore based on some kind of an attraction to something. What about if somebody it's pointed out to you? Somebody comes to you rather than you asking if you can do something. Somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, why don't you try this?" Are you ready for someone to point that out to you? Or would you rather stand in the shadows over here and wait, let everybody else, you're kind of doing one of these going like this. And this is where this is kind of steering because there's a lot of this going on where people are like, I'll let everybody else kind of do it. And what are you doing? You're digging a hole. You're burying your talent. You have it. Maybe you haven't found out what it is yet, but maybe you need to have someone help you discover what that is. And maybe it's just not your thing that you're trying to do. Are you ready for someone to suggest to you that you are pursuing something that may not be your thing, at least not yet? We have here in this example, let not many of you be teachers, at least at this point. When your knowledge improves a little bit and your ability to convey that, that someday, because the Hebrew writer says the opposite. He says, by now, you ought to be teachers. So at some point, you need to have enough knowledge that you could, whether sitting down one-on-one or whatever the forum is, and start telling someone about Jesus, right? And so, but maybe in a situation like this one, preaching or whatever, where you're up in front of people, I'm using oversimplified examples of these talents on purpose. I don't want us to get hung up on the detail-y type things that we could come up with. I want to go oversimplified for the sake of making the point. So I hope you don't think that I'm limiting this to just preaching and song leading and stuff like that.
You mentioned song leading. That's where I was going.
Okay.
Our church is a small congregation, and we're down to what I would say are two basic song leaders that are good song leaders. So the question went out with somebody who's willing to step up and lead sing. And the fear of failure obviously holds us back. However, someone told me one time, give it a try, because the other people in the congregation are thankful and glad that you're up there, because they're not up there.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
What's that?
You were willing to step up.
You were the one. Yeah, that's right.
So
It wasn't me. Yeah.
Even if you're not perfect, they'll overlook those imperfections. You need somebody to.
It seems like the smaller the congregation, the more appreciation there.
I think it also helps to know that if you make a mistake, song leading is like all ready for things to fall apart. It's so easy to make a mistake that even though it might be on your mind, by the time you're on to the next song or you're driving home, everybody else has forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And it's not because you're necessarily overly forgiving. It's just they're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you make a mistake, say, "Oh no," and then it becomes this thing where you're never going to do it again. They don't even remember.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Any other ideas on what sort of things that you acquire? I've mentioned these. I left some space for you to write other ideas down.
I guess I'm thinking about words like
Desire.
knowledge, skill, and experience. And so we gain specifically the knowledge, skill, and experience we gain in life. The desire, I think, is important in this context,
Sure.
as well as the others.
You think about the man with the 5 talents. Did he just stumble into some success? Or did there have to be some desire? Did he have to, whose pleasure did he have in mind?
His master.
The master, the pleasure of the master. And it's when we can let the pleasure of the master penetrate our heart, it moves us to do these things. Just like, I am afraid of song leading, but I'm going to do it for his pleasure and overcome my fear. That's maybe that's the way you can explain it to someone if they're tapping the brake pedal a little bit, say, hey, hold off. But there's a lot of different things that can manifest itself as an acquired thing. I think this probably speaks to most of us, where most of us would put ourselves in this category, where it's something I had to it was either shown to me or I had to kind of give it some long thought and maybe try it and kind of stumble around and maybe get my feet under me over time, and finally got to a point where I could actually make something happen. But it was not something as I mentioned earlier, something I came out of the womb doing. It was something I had to be maybe even be persuaded by someone that you could do this. Maybe a little shoving into the deep end on some occasions.
I think the one that strikes me is the pointing out, because there are a lot of people that they don't really know what their talents are, and if it weren't for other people always going to you for to do a certain thing, you may finally discover it because why are people always asking me to do this? They always go, think of this guy, or so that could be like when Jesus was selecting people.
Yeah.
He says,
Yes.
I want you to come with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he specifically knew which ones to select.
That's a good
And
point.
he even, I can't remember if Judas just voluntarily joined him or did he pick Judas?
Well, it
Yeah,
sounds like he went out and he prayed all night about it in Luke's
Yeah.
account before that. So this was a big deal to Jesus.
Yeah.
So he prays all night long for this, and then he comes and he says, "I need you and you."
Yeah.
I don't think they knew what the you and you was yet. It's like, okay, come along. And as time went by, he goes, "This was kind of a tall order. This is a bigger deal than I thought."
Exactly.
Even after that, on the occasion when they caught all those fish, Peter is saying, "Leave me, Master. I'm not worthy of you." He's. It's interesting how they viewed themselves. It's just like me.
Sometimes we make the mistake of letting our young people get up there and try to teach a Bible lesson when, the fear of speaking, to get up there and talk about themselves or something they know something about, gives them a foot up it. Rio did that in Sterling, and the kids got up and give their name and what they
Okay.
did. And I mean, it was really beneficial for them kids.
Just to kind of demystify and break through that moment.
The
of standing up
fear of
front.
speaking is.
Oh, they have said that there's people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death. So the guy that's delivering the eulogy would rather be the one that's fought.
I'm curious back to our parable. The person with the one talent said, "Master, I see you as this hard man." And is that, how do I say that? Is that the proper view? Or
No.
And is that why he
Maybe
part of the
Yes.
reason he took the position that he did was like, well, I don't want to lose this
almost
town.
shifting the blame a little bit here. Just kind of putting it on type of thing. Sort of like how Adam and Eve, this woman that you gave me, type of mentality.
Well, and it goes on, you reap where you don't sow,
Right.
and this gather where you don't scatter thing. You sense that the man with the one talent didn't want to risk that. It's like,
Or that's what he said anyway.
Yeah. But it's like, I want to at least give him back his
Right.
talent. I don't.
Yeah.
If I go and trade with this talent and I
Yeah.
lose everything, now I'm in really
Right.
in the tank.
I wonder, about that. If there wouldn't have been more honor in losing it than in doing nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, at least try.
It doesn't give. At least you tried. And so we're going to kind of get to the at least you tried part here.
I couldn't help talking about this. Couldn't help but think of Moses. Moses was told, "You go in and you talk to Pharaoh. You go in and you tell my people, I can't do it. I don't know what am I going to." But read Acts. Now he said, "I don't have the ability." In Acts, he says he was very what? Talented, eloquent, and all. And so, where was he?
Yeah.
I don't want to do
He
it
was
because
growing.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of where I want to go there too. You think about where you are with your talent. We sometimes have a snapshot mentality. Here's what my talent is, and we leave it at that. But what will it be tomorrow if you keep developing it? Better. It's going to be better. And so I want to move on from here. So believing you have talents, is it prideful to believe I'm talented? I mean, to just think about you're saying that out loud to yourself. No, it's not prideful. Okay, if it's not prideful, why is it not prideful?
It depends a lot on how you present yourself.
It depends on this, doesn't it?
Yeah. Are you doing
It
to
could
make
be.
yourself look good? Are you
Yeah.
doing it
What's your
to help
motive?
other people?
Right? So I think we see that word talent, we kind of shy away from it if we're kind of like not wanting to self-promote or whatever it is. It's like and say that you have talent, it seems a little braggadocious.
And you could just your wording could be like, I can do it,
Right.
rather than saying I have the talent and the
Yeah.
ability, you know, like you're
Mhm.
saying.
It's attitude, motivation, who's it for?
I think humility plays a big role in that.
Massive.
I'm the humblest person I know.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't think you beat your chest about it. You
Right.
just, it's almost like, I don't know how else to phrase, being a man and stepping up and doing it if you can.
I think our attitude should be thankful.
Yes, sir.
You know, God gave us
Right.
talent. Wow.
Wow, it's the wow.
And I relate a lot of things to athletics because I
Yes.
really enjoy athletics, but those people are talented,
Yeah.
but do they realize where they got that talent from?
Is it, look at me or is it a responsibility?
And you can take that talent and develop it to your point,
Mhm.
but the initial talent, like you were saying, you pick up a baseball and you throw it and you do well.
Mhm.
That was given to you by God.
Mhm.
And what you do with that, it's up to you. And that's the humble part.
And then David, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was also thinking that there's also sometimes, like at church, where you have to get up and do it. Most every day at school, I have to step up because no one else wants to.
Sometimes you have to be the guy, right?
Hmm.
Now, we're getting into this other part, with kind of in an oblique way, is allowing others, right? Then sometimes you think, well, I know how to do that. Someone else is stepping up. Do you step in front of them? It becomes a deal. David.
Yes, with the man with the 5 talents that was given to him, um, he took it up by faith and he put it to use, and he was able to channel it back to his master with increase.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole point behind what God is looking to us to do for him and his purpose. So, do you know talent? There's the obvious, visible ones. And when I put this material together, I was looking at how much I had here. Thinking, man, we'll get through this in 15 minutes. We'll be lucky to hit is it 45 minutes per session or ish?
Well, each one is allowed an hour's time,
Okay.
depending on the teacher, when he wants to talk, whether it's 45 or 50 or
Okay.
55,
Okay.
or so. It depends on the teacher.
Okay. We'll hustle along here. I don't want to hurry it in the interest of the discussion, but I want to make sure we get through these things. They're the obvious things, and I said I was going to oversimplify this, put some things up here like this, where you have, if you know a talent when you see one, might be someone who's able to lead singing or teach a class or able to lead a prayer, just put words together. Any other thoughts on that? Some of the more obvious ones. And it doesn't have to be in the assembly. I'm just using these because of what we're discussing more specifically on spiritual matters, but it doesn't have to be this. Some things that are more obvious in someone that you can see it, you look at it and say, they are able to what?
There's certain people that are great at inviting people to come.
Oh, yeah.
And somehow just it seems natural and they do it so well. And I was in the break room yesterday at work, and somebody said, "Oh, Happy New Year," and how was your holiday break or something like that. And he left the break room, and under my breath, and I said, "Oh, how's your relationship with Jesus?" Because it would be so disjointed.
Right.
It's like, well, how can I turn this into something?
Make it so non sequitur.
Yeah, make this a little more spiritual.
Yeah. How do I use that to?
Yeah. No, I don't. It's not a natural gift for me.
There's a guy I know, just real quick, a guy by the name of Tom Wright. I don't know if you know Tom. Anyway, I don't know how many of you have ever gone on door knocking campaigns. He was amazing. He could get more Bible studies going. I never saw anybody like him. I've gone on door knocking things. They had nothing to do with what I had. Nothing. It's just like, hey, and that was the end of the conversation. He had a way. Just I don't know what it was about him. He had a way, and he was good at it. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to go with him on these so I can watch what he does. Okay, what's your secret? What are you doing? I saw another hand.
Leading prayer is probably my Achilles tendon because, especially publicly, I can privately pray, but when I get up to do like an opening prayer, I can, I know the words, and starting might be good, but as it goes into the prayer, it gets I don't feel very confident.
Sure.
So that's probably my biggest challenge. I can write something down and say it as a prayer, but
It's valid, by the way.
But I try to just memorize.
Yes.
So.
Okay.
I'd just like to add, I think we can see the obvious in ourselves if we've ever had to leave the whole spiritual class or the whole.
It's almost yanked out of you, isn't it?
So
Yeah. I want to get to that point too. So here are some that are not so obvious. Maybe somebody who's really good at designing bulletin boards or organizing a visitation committee. These aren't the out in the open things that you see, right? Or a card ministry, organizing meals for shut-ins, putting the worship schedule together, or organizing VBS. And again, I left some blanks here for you to write some things down for yourself, things that are not as obvious, but certainly very beneficial to the things that the church does as a body, whether it's on a weekly basis or like the VBS, it's an annual thing or whatever that is. So, do you have to be the spearhead of the ministry in order to use the talents? Do you have to be that guy to get it started? And yeah, it should be somewhat obvious to you. You do not have to be in the limelight or anything of that nature. I want to take a look at this particular passage. I'm going to hurry along because in the interest of time, I have a story to share with you about Romans chapter 12. I was going to read the verses 4 through 8. But I want you, if you would, read that on your own, just because he talks about how we use our talents to serve one another. And he goes right from that passage into this one. And I want to read it complete, verses 9 through 21. And I want to relate the story to you. Actually, I'm going to tell you the story first, then read this passage. I was a little over a year ago. My aunt passed away. It's my mom's sister-in-law. She had been a shut-in for a good number of years. And I was going over there on Sunday evenings for not quite a year before she passed. But I would go over on Sunday evenings and just have a Bible study with her because she was a shut-in and she felt like she was starving spiritually, And to me, to feel that you're starving spiritual is in itself a positive sign. There's a hungering and a thirsting for that righteousness. So I went over and we would just have a nice little Bible study. We were studying the book of James. And we were talking about her situation, and she started crying because she felt like, I'm not involved. I'm not doing anything. She was a school teacher as a profession. So to her, doing something was standing up in front of a bunch of little kids teaching about Jesus. That was doing something, and certainly it was. But being a shut-in, she was a useless nothing now. I said, don't you tell that to me. Let me read something to you, and then we'll discuss what you just said to me about your uselessness. This is starting in verse 9. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor. Not lagging behind in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, persevering in tribulation, devoted to prayer, contributing to the needs of the saints, practicing hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, bless and curse not. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Never pay back evil for evil to anyone. Respect what is right in the sight of all men. If possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him. And if thirsty, give him a drink, for in so doing, you will heap burning coals upon his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. I read that to her. I said, I can't think of one of these things that you're not doing. Sitting here as a shut-in. You are doing these, and you're doing them really well. And so I don't know if I think she had to kind of chew on that a little bit. My point is, you don't have to be the person standing in the pulpit in order to be effective with your abilities, with your talents. So my question here is, are there some talents that are mentioned here in this passage? Do you find any talents mentioned? I put down a couple. How about this one? Contributing to the needs of the saints. That can be done in a number of ways, can't it? We think probably the first thing we think of is financial, and she was able to do that. But those aren't the only needs that the saints have, are they? How about practicing hospitality? We know that this one comes up in 1 Timothy 3:2, talking about elders. And Peter admonishes this about the hospitality, and I put that in here. It says, be hospitable to one another without complaint. Is it just for the ladies to learn at Ladies' Day? Isn't that what sometimes hospitality is relegated to? These ladies go and learn about how to use a crock pot in about 1,001 different ways. Because they're going to be the ones doing the hospitality, and they're very good at it. And I don't begrudge them because they're very good at it. But I don't think that this is limited to the ladies, considering that it is one of the things mentioned about elders. Elders, so you guys need to be hospitable. You need to practice hospitality. How about this one? Peacemakers. Mentions it there in Romans. Where else do we see about being peacemakers but in the Beatitudes? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Is that a talent? Have you ever known a peacemaker? Somebody who whenever there's a conflict, they just have this way of stepping in between the factions and either bringing them together, or at least quelling what's going on. But I have contended for a little while now that in order for me to be a peacemaker, I've got to have some of my own peace to bring to the table. How can I help someone make something I don't have? And so I have to be at peace in order before I can help others become peaceful with one another. And so it's something that perhaps we can build within ourselves, an ability that comes in pretty handy. Especially, let's say it's a church leader, an elder, whatever that capacity might be. There's going to be strife between people, isn't there? Just read the letters, all of the letters. There was strife within these churches. There had to have been a peacemaker, right? Can this be a talent? And finally, let's look at these two points here. Barnabas, according to Acts 9 and verse 27, his name was Joseph, but people knew him as Barnabas, son of encouragement. So how did he get to be known as the son of encouragement? Was he called that in the hope that he would grow into it? Or do you think that he was that and that's what he became known for? I'd say it's the latter. Was it a natural bent? Was it just in him to be this person who encouraged people? I see him, when I think of Barnabas, I see him traveling with Paul, but I also see him as the one who, when the people were standing back away from Paul when he first shows up, that Barnabas is the one that says, come on, let's break the ice here, guys. And he goes over and pulls Paul into the group. He's the one that was encouraging Paul. And for a little while, the early part of Acts, when they go around, it's Barnabas and Saul, because he was kind of the leader of the situation. Later on, it became Saul and Barnabas, because Saul started growing up and he started taking the leadership role. So you can see this encouragement coming from Barnabas. My question is this: are you known for it? Well, it's just not my natural thing. It doesn't say whether it was for Barnabas, and so it doesn't say that for you either. Are you known for this? Is it only for those who are so gifted? Let's look at these passages. Who can read Hebrews 3:13? Let's go ahead and read both of the passages. I have them both printed out there. If I could have a reader read Hebrews 3:13 and Hebrews 10:25 with this question on your heart: is it just for those who are gifted this way? Go ahead, whoever.
But encourage one another day after day, as long as it's still called today, lest any of you be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Not forsaking on assembling together, but as in the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near.
Does it sound like there's an option here, whether we encourage one another? You think, well, I'm just not that good at it. Okay. Sounds like you have some work to do then. I need to become more of an encourager. It's easy to be a critic. Those are a dime a dozen. The encourager, those are harder to come by. How about if you become easy to come by? Because you decided, you know what? I do criticize a lot. I'm going to change that. I'm going to say what's right with that. And I'm going to point out what's right with that. I'm going to make sure that that's what I'm, not so that people go, hey, look, here's another sign of encouragement over here. That's not the objective, is it? It's to serve God and give him the glory. That's the point.
Well, being a critic, you're not going to gain anything. You're not helping anybody, not helping yourself. You're not helping whoever.
It just tears down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It just tears
If you
down.
encourage, then that helps you, but it also helps you who are encouraging.
Yeah. And the more you're a critic, you think people start to try to maybe keep their distance from you a little bit? That's certainly not in keeping with what we're about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can criticize in a positive way. There's a certain way to do that.
There is a way.
You could tell them, you did a really good job. Had you thought about this approach? And then it kind of falls on them. No, I didn't think about that.
Well, that was Paul's technique, wasn't it? In his letters, he would start out commending them with the things that they were doing right. Start out there. You got some work to do on this, though. However, I love you so much. The sandwich effect.
Put courage in.
Courage. Encourage. Yeah. Speaking up does take some courage too. You're kind of making yourself vulnerable a little bit, aren't you, when you're doing that?
And trying to put courage into the person you're talking
and
to.
help to infuse courage into that person by encouraging.
Not just tear down.
Not brave to tell them, but also where they're like, oh, they feel that maybe emboldens them to try even more. If you're tearing them down, what's going to happen? They're done. We're walking away. Okay. Finally, how about contentment? And this is going to be my final thought here. And I use this not as the kind of the conclusion, but to point you in a direction to show as you're reading the scriptures, maybe you already do this, look for the things that are talents that are natural or acquired, either one, and ask yourself, am I this? Do I exhibit contentment? And is that even a talent? Is this a skill or talent? Is it right for me to put it in that camp? Well, I think about Philippians 4:11 through 12. I didn't have the passage written out in full here, but Paul is talking about how he had learned in the situation, whether in prosperity or in need. What did he learn? He learned contentment, regardless of his circumstances. My point is, he learned it. Did he walk into it going, into that first prison experience, going, okay, guys, chain me to the wall, let's get this going. I doubt he was really all that excited about it, but he went ahead and did it anyway. And as he went along, he learned, you know what? I can't let that determine whether or not I am dedicated to what I'm doing. If I've got a lot, great. If I don't have a lot, fine. I can be content in all these. I can do all things through Jesus, Christ who strengthens me, is the context for that passage. People have taken that out of context and use it for all kinds of things, and it doesn't mean that. It means this.
It's an attitude we all ought to have.
We ought to.
Just a few words and we can just turn things around where we will never reach them again.
That's right. Okay.
Just got to remember, tomorrow's another day.
Right. All right. Well, that is lesson 1. I appreciate your participation. Went about 5 minutes over, but so let's see if we can have a mad dash to the restroom. If anybody see who can get first in line here, but.